You know it will destroy you. So why don't you stop? Sometimes a person knows they are hurting themselves. They are fully aware. Somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice tells them to stop. They know exactly what they are doing, they can see the outcome, and they may even feel guilt before they begin. And yet, they continue. At a certain point, it is no longer about the damage itself. The real struggle is refusing to turn back, because turning back means confrontation. And while people can endure pain, they often cannot endure confrontation. According to Dostoevsky, this is where the darkest corner of the human soul resides, choosing the wrong path while fully knowing it is wrong. This is not a slip or a momentary lapse. It is not an accident or a loss of control. It is a path people walk consciously, and that is precisely what makes it terrifying. There is no ignorance here. No lack of awareness. People know exactly what they are doing. So the question must be asked, why do people keep going when they know they are harming themselves? At first, the answers seem obvious. Trauma is blamed. Weakness is named. Bad habits, childhood, environment, circumstances, everything is laid out as an explanation. But Dostoevsky rejects all of these. For him, the issue is not a lack of something, but an excess. An excess of awareness, an excess of consciousness, an excess of freedom. Humans are awake enough to see everything, but not strong enough to fix everything. This contradiction turns them into their own executioners. They cannot escape, yet they cannot resolve the problem either. They know, but they cannot act. They see, but they cannot change. Over time, it is not the pain itself that destroys them, but this persistent helplessness gnawing from within. In Dostoevsky's world, humans are not designed for happiness. They do not truly seek peace, they seek meaning. And meaning often passes through pain. Sometimes it goes even further and becomes pain itself. Pain proves to people that they still feel something, that they are still alive. A well-ordered, problem-free life, by contrast, can feel eerily silent, almost like death. And for some, that silence is more frightening than suffering. Silence leaves a person alone with themselves. There is nowhere to run, no excuse to hide behind, no crisis to distract the mind. In that moment, a person is forced to confront who they truly are. And this confrontation is often heavier than expected, because the image people carry of themselves is far more fragile than they assume. This is why the narrator of Notes from Underground sabotages himself. He isolates himself deliberately, humiliates himself knowingly, and repeatedly makes the wrong choices. Doing the right thing would pull him into a life designed by others, a life in which he feels he cannot exist as himself. For him, self-destruction is not collapse, it is rebellion, a quiet but profound defiance against logic, expectations, and everything labeled normal. Here, we must pause and reconsider. Are our mistakes truly unconscious, or are they sometimes a deliberate rejection of the right path? Why do people repeat the same mistakes again and again? Is it because they cannot change, or because they do not want to? Dostoevsky dismantles the idea that humans are fundamentally rational beings. People do not always act in their own best interest. Often, they do the opposite. Logic makes humans predictable, and predictability is the enemy of freedom. Sometimes people hurt themselves simply to prove that they are free. This is the price of saying, I can act as I choose, and many are willing to pay it. Here, an uncomfortable truth emerges. By harming themselves, people experience a strange sense of power. Even if it hurts, they chose it. It is not something that happened to them, but something they decided. This feels more tolerable than being a passive victim. Many would rather make painful choices themselves than have pain imposed on them, because control still belongs to them. If this feels familiar, you have already stepped into Dostoevsky's world. Raskolnikov in Crime and Punishment does exactly this. Murder is not his goal, it is his experiment. He is asking a single question, can I do this? But the real tragedy begins afterward. The human mind and body do not obey theory. Raskolnikov can justify the crime intellectually, but his conscience refuses to stay silent. And when someone believes they have escaped their conscience, they usually make it louder. Most of the time, self-harm is not driven by a clear outcome or result. There is no final objective. It is about releasing pressure. Everything that is suppressed, unspoken, and unresolved seeks an outlet. Often, people turn this explosion inward. Anger aimed at others produces guilt. Anger aimed at oneself feels familiar, safer. People forgive themselves more easily for hurting themselves than for hurting others. According to Dostoevsky, shame operates quietly beneath all of this. A person senses their potential but knows they cannot reach it. As the gap between who they could be and who they are grows wider, it transforms into shame. Shame does not shout, it erodes. And rather than living with it, people punish the self they believe caused it, as if pain could restore balance. That is why Dostoevsky's characters constantly devalue themselves. They question their intelligence, their morality, even their humanity. They willingly diminish themselves in the eyes of others because, deep inside, they already feel condemned. Pain gives this guilt a tangible form. It replaces vague discomfort with something concrete. Another disturbing truth appears here. Pain can silence conscience. Suffering becomes a form of atonement. The thought, "I am already paying for it," protects a person from deeper responsibility. This is why some people resist healing. Because healing would require self-forgiveness, and forgiving oneself is often harder than continuing to suffer. In Dostoevsky's universe, inner conflict is never fully resolved. Humans want good and desire destruction at the same time. They want to escape, yet they sink deeper. This tension is constant. Self-harm simplifies it. Everything collapses into one emotion, pain. And for a moment, everything else goes quiet. Pain anchors the mind in the present. It eliminates plans, calculations, and future fears. The past is heavy, the future uncertain, but pain is immediate and real. It can be felt, defined, even controlled. For some, pain is not an escape but an attachment. Dostoevsky does not romanticize human darkness, nor does he deny it. He does not label the self-destructive person as sick. He understands them, or rather, he forces us to. Because behind these behaviors lie the unavoidable contradictions of being human: freedom, meaning, shame, guilt, and fear, all existing at once. Perhaps the hardest truth is this: people do not always want to heal. Sometimes they only want to be understood. Sometimes they only want their pain to be seen. Self-harm becomes a language when words fail. A silent but unmistakable message. And Dostoevsky listens to that language without turning away. He makes one thing clear: people believe self-harm will make them stronger, but most of the time it breaks them instead. Still, the path remains tempting. Because the greatest threat to a person is not pain, but meaninglessness. Pain offers a quick solution. It works briefly. In the long run, it corrodes the soul. Feeling something, even pain, can feel preferable to feeling nothing. That is why healing can be frightening. Healing removes excuses. Responsibility begins. The question shifts from "why am I like this?" to "what will I do now?" And so one final question arises: did the things that pulled you down truly destroy you, or did you hold on to them? The question is not accusatory, but it is unsettling. Because often, the answer is unclear. A person can be both victim and perpetrator at once. In the brothers Karamazov, this contradiction deepens. Dmitri burns with passion. Ivan poisons himself with intellect. Alyosha clings to goodness. All suffer differently, because suffering is not punishment, it is a consequence of being human. According to Dostoevsky, one cannot be human without suffering, and that is why some people invite it knowingly. When someone harms themselves, it may not come from self-hatred. Often, it comes from fear of losing identity. Pain stabilizes the self. It says, "This is who I am." Peace and order introduce uncertainty. They offer no clear definition. That is why healing can feel threatening. Familiar pain disappears. Pain becomes a refuge for delaying responsibility, but every refuge is also a prison. Over time, wounds become identity, and letting go of them means redefining oneself. For Dostoevsky's characters, this is more terrifying than suffering itself. According to Dostoevsky, self-harm is not an illness but a choice, conscious or semi-conscious. Humans are free enough to choose even the darkest option. Yet this freedom exhausts rather than elevates them. This is the tragedy of modern humanity: too many possibilities and no certainty about which to choose. And while they hesitate, they cling to pain. So the final question remains: if pain is what made you who you are you truly ready to let it go? Do not answer too quickly. Dostoevsky never wanted easy answers. Some questions are meant to stay with us, quietly reshaping us over time. So maybe the real question isn't why pain exists in your life. Maybe the question is why you stayed with it. Why you learned its shape, its weight, its voice, and slowly called it home. Because pain, at least, tells you who you are. Healing doesn't. Healing asks something far more terrifying. It asks you to choose who you will become. And Dostoevsky leaves us here, with no comfort and no answers. Only this question, quietly waiting inside you. If pain shaped your identity, are you brave enough to live without it?